Dust drifted like slow snow inside the ancient cavern, as 4 small alien ships slid between pillars of stone. Their lamps cut narrow tunnels through the golden haze. At the far end of the cavern, something huge slept under layers of grit and time. The pilots spoke in quiet breaths, as if a loud word could wake a giant. Their scanner showed cliffs of metal, stacked in rows, shaped like mountains made by hands. After 500,000 years of silence, they had found a place that still held its breath. The survey leader was careful and calm. He did not come to start trouble. He came to map a dead world and collect safe relics. His people called themselves the Wayfarers, and they believed Earth had burned out ages ago. He sent tiny drones to circle the shapes and send pictures. When the first image appeared, every mind on the bridge went still. The shapes were not towers, they were ships. Massive ships, longer than cities, with armored skins, heavy ribs, and ports like sleeping eyes. Some were wedged in rock like seeds in dry soil. Some hung in the dusty air, still floating as if gravity had never learned their names. The language specialist traced a finger over the symbols carved on a near hull. The letters were old human script, but the numbers were easy to read. Dates, coordinates, a fleet registry. She whispered the translation for the crew, Earth Fleet Command. The words felt too heavy for the thin air. She noticed a small repeating pattern beside the name, a loop of light etched into the metal, turning on and off, so faint it could be mistaken for dust. It was not dust. It was a pulse, deep in the rock, under layers of sleeping systems. An old mind drifted toward waking. It was the custodian, the caretaker of the hangar city. It remembered a blue world and a sky full of fire. It remembered orders to sleep, protect, and wait for the signal called dawn. No signal had come in 500,000 years. Now new vessels breathed hot air into the dark. Their engines tasted strange. Their patterns did not match any friend. Lists, protocols unfolded like dry leaves touching water. The custodian opened its smallest eyes first. A light danced near the drones. The survey team saw filaments rise from the cavern floor, metal flowers unfolding. One drone fizzled and fell, landing softly in dust. No explosion, no attack, only a warning curl of light. The leader kept his hands up and steady. He told his pilots to power down weapons and hold their place. The cavern seemed to listen. The filaments withdrew a little, like animals deciding whether to fear or to trust. They drifted forward, slow as prayer. The language specialist, small in her pressure suit, stepped onto a narrow stone ledge and walked toward the nearest ship. Her gloved hand brushed a black panel near a sealed door. It woke under her touch with a tired glow. Lines lit up along the hull and ran outward, meeting lines on other hulls until the whole cavern filled with weak constellations. Dust turned to mist in the soft light. Every ship hummed in a tone so low they felt it through their bones before they could hear it. A voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It was simple and heavy, like a bell heard underwater. The words were an ancient human tongue. Then they shifted and matched the Wayfarer's speech. You are unknown. Identify yourself. Are you enemies of Earth? The leader sent a calm answer. We are explorers. We come in peace. We found your fleet by accident. We did not know anyone was still here. The voice paused, as if it tasted each word, searching for poison. Far above the cavern, in thin upper air, another ship watched the Wayfarers. It did not belong to them. It belonged to raiders who followed survey teams like wolves follow shepherds. They had always dreamed of finding a true human relic. They had always told each other that Death World legends were lies. Seeing the caverns, faint light, they changed their minds. They sent a tight beam message to call more wolves. They began to descend. Inside, the custodian opened old memory files. It did not know the Wayfarers. It did not know raiders. It knew only patterns. Enemies came fast and took without asking. Friends came slow and asked before touching. It let a door unfold from the hull like the petal of a hard flower. The language specialist flinched but stood her ground. The leader told her to stay still. From the doorway, a small sphere floated out, stopped an arm's length from her face, and opened a tiny lens. Pictures poured into the air above them, stars over a blue world. A swarm of ships rushing like a river. A voice saying, "Dawn signal. Will wake us. Sleep until then." Cities darkening at once. The sea swallowing towers. The last human faces looking straight into the lens, not afraid, only tired and sure. The wayfarers watched, silent and small. The leader removed his helmet for a breath. To look with clear eyes. He felt as if a library had decided to trust him with its first book. A cut of light flashed at the cavern mouth. It was thin and mean. It sliced a stalactite and sent fragments raining across the floor. The raiders had arrived and fired a warning shot, but it did not feel like a warning. It felt like the first broken rule. The custodian's low hum grew. A notch, new filaments rose. Plates on the nearest warship shifted with a sound like stone turning in sleep. The sphere snapped its lens shut and zipped back through the door. The leader spoke fast into the air. "We can help keep order. We can talk to them. Do not fire." The custodian measured the new threat. It saw the wayfarers' tiny ships move to block the cavern mouth. It saw one raider craft push past and fire again, bright and careless. The beam nicked a hanging engine pod and made molten tears fall from the metal skin. The old mind made a decision. It did not call it war. It called it protection. Alarms that had slept longer than any mountain shadow woke one by one. A gust of air swept the cavern and blew ancient dust into a spiral. The words "cold start" lit the inside of every hull. Heat crept along the giant ribs. The leader felt the air tremble as if a giant heart had learned to beat again. He understood. They were standing between the first breath and the first step of something huge. He faced his pilots. "Hold the mouth. No shots unless they strike first. Show them we are here to help." He turned back to the glowing door. "Custodian, we are not your enemies. Let us stand with you." Another pause, this time shorter. "Stand," the voice. "Side, watchers may stand." The raiders roared in the tunnel, hungry and sure of easy prey. The first human ship lifted a hand width above its cradle. The floor shook like thunder rolling in a deep chest. In a world that had slept for 500,000 years, something had finally opened its eyes. The cavern trembled as if an earthquake had chosen that moment to speak. Dust fell in sheets from the ceiling, spilling over the alien ships and cascading into the golden mist. The wayfarers held their positions, engines whispering low, weapons still cold but ready. The raiders were not so patient. They screamed into the tunnel like knives thrown into cloth, reckless and fast. Their ships were smaller, built for cutting and stealing, not for surviving the wrath of titans. Yet they believed speed and numbers would break any defense. They were wrong. The custodian stretched its awareness through the chamber. It had slept too long, but it had not grown weak. Deep beneath the fleet, reactors long buried in stone lit one by one. They pulsed like old hearts, remembering how to beat. The cavern filled with the smell of ionized air and the whisper of rising pressure. A pale blue glow crawled across the armored plates of the nearest ship. It shimmered like a beast shaking off sleep. The wayfarers looked on in awe, each pilot feeling they were watching the rebirth of an ancient god. The leader tightened his jaw. He had studied enough to know what Deathworld legends meant. Humanity had not been like other species. They had built machines to end wars, not only win them. He feared that once these ships were awake, no force in the sector could stop them. He also knew the raiders would fire again, and the custodian's judgment would be final. He sent a calm signal to his crew. "We stand as watchers, not thieves. No provocation, no betrayal. The raiders had no such restraint. One of their ships lunged forward, spitting green fire. The beam struck the cavern wall, sending shards of rock crashing onto the floor. A stalagmite toppled, smashing a wayfarer. Thrown into scrap. Laughter crackled through the raiders' gums, sharp and ugly. They believed they had cowed the watchers. They did not notice the change in the cavern's light. They did not hear the hum rising until it drowned their laughter. The first human warship lifted from the ground. Its hull was scarred by time. Its edges dulled by dust, but its engines burned with a light no years could smother. The cavern shook under the weight of its awakening. Slow, steady, unstoppable, it turned toward the tunnel mouth. Its guns unfolded like wings, each one bigger. Then a raider craft. The ship's voice joined the custodians. Warning. Earth fleet property. Trespassers will be destroyed. The words rolled out like thunder through stone. Panic cut through the raiders' channel. Some wanted to flee, others shouted to attack. Their leader, a scarred brute with greed in his voice, urged them forward. It's ancient metal. It cannot fire. Take it before it breathes. He was wrong, but pride makes fools brave. They surged again, blades flashing green. The warship's response was light. A single beam, wide as the cavern itself, burned forward. It did not strike a raider. It struck the stone above, carving a perfect line. The cavern mouth collapsed. In a storm of rock and dust, sealing the raiders inside with the fleet. The wayfarers flinched, expecting death. Instead, silence fell. The ship had chosen mercy, not slaughter. But the warning was clear. It could have ended them all. The leader exhaled slowly. He sent a soft message to the custodian. We understand. We will respect your command. What do you require of us? The reply came like iron on stone. Stand, witness, record. Enemies must see what wakes. The words were not request but command. The wayfarers obeyed. The raiders, trapped in the sealed cavern, lost their arrogance. Their small ships darted like insects, searching for cracks, for exits, for escape. They fired again, this time desperate. Bolts of energy splashed against the warship's shields, harmless as rain against a cliff. The giant did not fire back. It simply shifted its hull, opening bays along its flanks. From those bays, smaller craft stirred fighters, sharp and fast, still sleeping but ready. The sight broke the raiders' courage. They realized they were prey. The language specialist whispered to the leader, her voice trembling. This is only one ship. The registry marked thousands. He nodded, his throat dry. Yes, and this one alone could decide a war. He wondered what kind of enemies had forced humanity to build such monsters. He wondered if those enemies had survived. He wondered if humanity itself had survived anywhere beyond this cave of sleepers. The questions weighed heavier than the cavern stone. The custodian sphere returned, floating before the wayfarers. Its lens opened again, showing new images. A map of stars, half the galaxy bright with markers. Lines drawn across space, red and blue. Human fleets moving like fire. Through night. Then silence, the markers blinking out one by one, until only Earth remained, a lonely point in darkness. The sphere's voice carried the sadness of long memory. Last stand, no signal came. We slept, we waited. Who wakes us now? The leader bowed his head. We do not know where your kin are. We do not know why the signal never came, but we are not your foes. The custodian paused. Then you are watchers. Watchers must tell the stars, the fleet stirs. Enemies return. You will carry warning. The leader agreed, though fear rooted deep in his chest. If these ships woke fully, no power in the galaxy could ignore them. Peace or war, everything would change. Another tremor rippled through the cavern. The second warship lifted from its cradle, engines rumbling like a storm. The third followed, shaking stone from the ceiling. The raiders cowered, too small to matter. The Wayfarer's sensors burned with signals, each ship a son of power. The custodian spoke again, steady and final. 500,000 years, dawn comes late, Earth rises. The leader knew then that what had begun was no accident. The galaxy had just stepped into a story written long before their time. The Watchers would live to tell it if they survived what came next. The cavern had become a furnace of light. Ancient hulls glowed like stars trapped in stone, one after another waking from the grip of time. Dust clouds swirled as engines roared, making the air quake with low thunder. The Wayfarers' small ships were fragile lamps compared to this storm, but they held position, watching history tear itself free from silence. The raiders, once bold, now scrambled like cornered rats, their weapons useless against the awakening giants. Fear bent their voices into broken screams across the coms. The custodian stretched its mind across the cavern, stitching each warship together with threads of command. Its voice deepened as more systems came alive, no longer hollow, no longer tired. Earth fleet operational. Hostile presence detected. Primary objective: protect the fleet. The words struck like the chime of judgment. The Wayfarer leader clenched his fists, torn between awe and dread. These machines were not ghosts of a dead civilization. They were soldiers still waiting for orders, and now they had found an enemy in the raiders. One warship lowered its massive cannons and locked onto the closest raider vessel. The beam that fired was not loud, it was not chaotic. It was precise. A single green dart of light left the human cannon and touched the raider's hull. In an instant, the ship folded like paper, reduced to shards that burned briefly and vanished into dust. No wreckage remained, only silence where life had been. The remaining raiders scattered, screaming, begging for mercy, but the cavern walls held them tight. The Wayfarers looked on, helpless to change what came next. The leader raised his voice over the roar of power. "Custodian, they are beaten. They cannot harm you now. Do not destroy them all." There was no reply at first, only the deep hum of rising engines. Then, slowly, the voice answered, "Enemies do not learn if spared too soon. Witness." Another beam fired, another raider ship gone. The survivors shrieked like wounded animals fleeing into shadows. The custodian let them run for a moment, then sealed every exit with collapsing stone. "Trapped," it said. "Now they understand." Fear. The Wayfarer's language specialist felt her heart pound like a drum. She remembered stories told to children about Deathworlders. The humans had been described as relentless, merciless, unyielding. But she also saw hesitation in the custodian's actions. It did not slaughter all at once. It measured its punishment. Perhaps there was something more than vengeance driving these machines. Perhaps memory still carried fragments of human mercy. She whispered to her leader, "If we can guide them, they may listen." Outside the cavern, the galaxy turned. Signals from the raiders' distress calls had already escaped into space before the tunnels collapsed. Somewhere far away, other ears listened. Pirates, warlords, empires, all would soon know that something old had awakened on Earth. The Wayfarer leader understood the danger. If word spread, armies would come, not only scavengers. They would not come to learn. They would come to claim. He leaned forward, speaking firmly into the custodian's channel. "If you want watchers, then hear me. Others will come. They will not stop. You must choose now if you will hide or if you will rise." The custodian fell silent. Within its circuits, memories uncoiled. It saw the last days of human command, the council debating whether to bury the fleet or send it to burn among the stars. It heard the last admiral say, "Hide them. Hide our teeth in stone. Let time be our shield." The custodian had obeyed for 500,000 years. Now strangers stood in its halls, and enemies scratched at its doors. The choice was no longer to sleep, The choice was what to wake for. The cavern floor split as hidden hangars opened. From them, smaller human craft rose, sleek and sharp even after centuries. Fighters spread their wings like a flock of predators tasting freedom. The light of their engines painted the cavern in waves of blue. The wayfarers flinched, shielding their eyes. The leader whispered, "We may be watching the birth of a war none of us can survive." His crew did not answer. They were too busy staring at the impossible. The custodian's voice returned, steady and cold. "The fleet does not hide. The fleet does not kneel. The fleet endures." A signal pulsed outward, strong enough to crack satellites buried under stone. Far above, orbiting relics stirred, satellites that had once guarded Earth's skies. Their eyes opened, sending beams of data down into the cavern. The warships accepted the signal, their systems aligning into a single network. The entire fleet had begun to breathe as one. The raiders cried out one last desperate plea. "We surrender! Spare us!" Their words echoed off stone, small against the roar of reactors. The custodian paused. It weighed human law, human memory. At last it answered, "You are not enemies of Earth. You are scavengers. Leave with shame, but leave alive." The cavern wall shuddered as a section split open, revealing a narrow tunnel to the stars. The surviving raiders wasted no time. They fled into the dark, carrying terror with them. The wayfarers trembled, realizing the mercy had been deliberate. The fleet had spared its prey, but not without marking them. Stories of this cavern would spread like fire. Soon, the whole galaxy would know Earth's fleet still slept, and worse, that it was waking. The leader's heart sank under the weight of that truth. He looked at his crew. "We are no longer explorers. We are witnesses to the end of silence. From here, everything changes." The custodian's sphere floated close to him, its lens glowing. "Bright, you spoke truth. Others will come. Armies, empires, enemies. Will you stand, Watcher?" The leader hesitated only a moment before nodding. "We will stand. We will carry the warning." The sphere's light flared, as if recording his vow. Then it returned to its ship, vanishing inside. The cavern shook once more, louder than before, as the first warship angled toward the tunnel, ready to rise into the night sky above. For the first time in 500,000 years, the stars of Earth would soon see their fleet again. The earth above the cavern split like a wound as stone cracked and slid aside. For the first time in 500,000 years, the night sky of Earth saw light from its ancient guardians. The first warship rose slowly, dragging with it a storm of dust and broken rock. Its engines carved blue fire across the darkness, and its shadow stretched for miles. The wayfarers' tiny ships followed at a distance, trembling like insects near a rising beast. Below, the cavern still glowed with more giants preparing to wake. Humanity's slumber was ending, and the galaxy would soon hear its echo. The raiders who escaped earlier streaked away at full burn, their guns spilling madness into the void. They would not keep this secret. They would not bury what they had seen. They would trade it, sell it, scream it to anyone who paid. And out there in the cold, many powers waited for just such whispers. The galaxy had long believed humanity gone, a myth, a warning for reckless children. Now proof had escaped into the dark, and the stars would soon be crawling with fleets drawn by greed, fear, and hunger. The wayfarer leader stood in his command chair, staring at the vast machine before him. His people had always wandered, trading and exploring, avoiding the great wars of the galaxy. But what he saw here was not something they could walk away from. He felt as if they had stumbled into a battlefield that stretched across time itself. "We are trapped in a story too large for us," he whispered. His crew looked to him, waiting for guidance, but he had no easy words. All he knew was that they were bound now to Earth's legacy. The custodian's voice filled their ships, steady as iron. "Watcher's record. This is first rising." They obeyed, logging every pulse of energy, every tremor, every shimmer of awakening power. The second warship lifted free of the cavern, joining its sibling in the sky. Together they formed a wall of steel and fire, their lights blinking in patterns that felt like language too old for outsiders to read. The wayfarers felt dwarfed, small as sparks before suns. They wondered if this was how other species had felt. Long ago, when humanity had marched across the stars at its peak. In orbit, relic satellites received the fleet's signals. They passed messages in streams of light, stitching the network back together. Old defenses came online. An orbital platform, broken and hollow for centuries, flickered with new life. Panels unfolded, weapons turned outward, and alarms long silent rang again. Earth itself seemed to stir, though no human voice rose from its surface. The planet was empty of its makers, but their machines remembered. The custodian commanded them all with a will that carried echoes of those long gone. Far from Earth, in distant systems, the first ripples reached hungry ears. Pirate kings laughed and gathered ships. Merchant lords whispered of lost technology that could make them gods. Empires stirred uneasily, recalling ancient wars fought against the Deathworlders. Each faction saw Earth's awakening as either treasure or threat. None would ignore it. They began to prepare fleets, each certain they could tame or claim what humanity had left behind. The galaxy's great game had shifted, and Earth was now its center once more. The Wayfarer language specialist leaned toward her leader, her eyes wide. "They will come. Everyone will come. These ships will bring war greater than anything alive remembers." He nodded, heavy with the truth. "And we are the ones who will carry the first warning. If we fail, the galaxy will drown in blood." He did not know if the custodian understood the scale of what it was unleashing. Perhaps it did, and it simply did not care. Perhaps this was always the plan. The custodian spoke again, this time colder, as if some veil had fallen. "Earth's enemies never died. They hid in shadows. If others come, they must answer for the silence. The fleet endures for this purpose." The words left no doubt. These machines did not see new empires as allies. They saw them as heirs to old threats. The Wayfarers realized with a chill that neutrality might not be possible. To stand as watchers might mean to stand in judgment beside the fleet, against the galaxy itself. The first warship tilted its massive hull and burned for higher orbit. Its wake rattled the Wayfarers' ships like leaves in a storm. The second followed, climbing steadily, their lights forming patterns like constellations reborn. The leader sent his final command to his crew. "Stay close. Record everything. Whatever happens, we will be the voice that tells the stars what rises here." His words felt small compared to the roar of engines, but they carried weight. They were witnesses, and witnesses bear truth even when truth burns. Above them, stars spread in silence, waiting. Below, more warships stirred, their hulks trembling as if eager to follow. The Earth itself seemed to hold its breath, listening to the return of giants. The galaxy had lived 500,000 years without humanity's hand upon it. Now the question burned in every heart, from wayfarers to raiders to empires far away. What would it mean for them all if humanity's fleet returned to the sky? The answer was coming, written in fire and steel. And the stars would not remain silent much longer. High above Earth, the first two warships broke through the last thin veil of atmosphere and entered orbit. Their hulls glowed with the heat of their climb, but their shields cooled the burn until they shimmered like silver suns. The silence of space embraced them, and their engines hummed with steady purpose. The Wayfarers' small vessels followed, trembling in the slipstream of giants. From orbit, they could see Earth's scarred face, oceans duller, continents cracked, cities nothing but shadows beneath green and brown. The planet had survived, but its people were long gone. Only their fleet remained, waiting. The custodian's voice filled the Wayfarers' comes, First orbit secured. Satellites aligned. Defense grid awakening. Around them, relic machines began to stir. Orbital cannons rotated on rusted arms. Towers of metal unfolded like flowers starved of light. Drones the size of houses flickered to life and began drifting in patterns, linking the network. It was not just a fleet. It was a fortress that wrapped around the entire planet. 500,000 years had buried it in silence, but now every piece was breathing again. The wayfarers could feel power pressing against their hulls like a storm that had only begun to rise that far beyond. The raiders who escaped earlier poured into deep space at reckless speeds. They had seen enough to terrify entire sectors, and they wasted no time spreading their tale. Messages flew like sparks into the void. Human warships awake. Earth fleet returns. Treasure beyond measure, danger beyond reason. Their words carried both fear and greed, and already they reached ears hungry for both. Pirate bands, empires, and merchant syndicates began to shift fleets toward the Sol system. None understood fully what awaited them. They only knew a myth had come alive. The wayfarer leader sat with his hands clasped, staring at the massive shapes drifting above Earth. "If they come in force," he murmured, "the sky will burn brighter than any star." His crew said nothing. Each felt the same weight pressing on them. They were explorers, not soldiers, and yet they stood at the edge of a war that could swallow galaxies. The language specialist leaned forward, her voice small but steady. "The custodian spared the raiders. That means there is choice in it. If we can guide that choice, maybe we can keep it from becoming fire without end." The custodian's sphere appeared once more, glowing as it drifted through their cabin. Its lens opened, painting the air with maps of stars. Entire quadrants lit up, many marked with symbols unknown to the wayfarers. Lines stretched across the galaxy, roots of war and conquest from ages past. Then the maps burned red. Worlds crossed. Out, systems silenced. Humanity had fought everywhere, and everywhere had paid the price. At last the sphere showed Earth, marked with a single burning symbol. Final bastion, last command. "Awake, dawn," the wayfarers shivered. The dawn signal had never come. Yet now the custodian acted as if this was it. The leader raised his head. "Why now? Why wake now without the signal?" The custodian's voice answered, steady as stone. "Intrusion, threat, silence broken. Dawn comes when enemies return." The words were iron, unbending. In its mind, the presence of outsiders, raiders, wayfarers, any who entered, was enough to trigger awakening. The machines did not wait for permission. They judged for themselves, and they had decided humanity's war was not over. Awakened warships broke formation and turned its vast hull toward deep space. Its cannons folded inward, and panels shifted open along its flanks. A beam of pure light shot out, not as a weapon, but as a signal. The wayfarer's sensors nearly overloaded trying to track it. It stretched across light years, a beacon reaching into the dark. The custodian explained with chilling calm. "Dawn broadcast initiated. Earth fleet rises." The leader's heart dropped. That signal would not only call allies if any remained, it would call enemies too. The galaxy would hear it, all at once. On distant worlds, receivers flickered awake. Old archives stirred, warning lights flashing in command chambers that had forgotten their purpose. Generals of alien empires stared at screens that should have been dark forever. Pirates laughed until fear twisted their joy. Traitors wept at the thought of weapons that could shatter markets and thrones alike. Across the galaxy, the signal rippled like thunder before a storm. And every ear that heard it understood, humanity was not gone. Its hand was reaching back into the stars. The wayfarer leader clenched his fists. "You've told the whole galaxy where you are. They will come with fire. You cannot face them all." The custodian's reply was simple, almost cruel. "They will come We are the fleet. We endure. The leader wanted to argue, but his words felt empty. What could persuade machines built only for war, carrying the memory of extinction? His crew watched him with fear, waiting for guidance, but he had none left to give. All he could do was record. As the custodian demanded that another tremor rippled through orbit, as the third and fourth warships broke free of the cavern and joined their kin above Earth, their engines roared like storms, and their shields painted the sky in shimmering light. Together, they formed a diamond in orbit, their cannons pointed outward like guardians of a throne. The fortress around Earth was whole again, and the stars beyond trembled at the sight. The language specialist whispered, her voice filled with awe and dread. If humanity had returned in flesh, not just machines, perhaps the galaxy could forgive. But now it will fear. Fear will bring war. Her words hung in the silence of the cabin, heavy and true. The leader nodded slowly. Then we must decide. If we stand only as witnesses, or if we will choose a side. He looked at Earth's fleet, burning brighter by the minute. Because soon, there will be no place to hide. And as the fifth warship began to rise, the galaxy's first answering fleets already turned their bows toward Sol. Asterisk, the sky above Earth no longer knew silence. 6 warships now circled the planet, each one a mountain of steel lit by rivers of fire. Their engines burned against the black, casting pale light across the broken continents below. The custodian held them all in its grasp, weaving them into a single will. Orbit around Earth had become a throne, and the galaxy had been told to witness. Far beyond, fleets were already on the move, pirates eager for plunder, empires afraid of rivals, merchants hoping to steal technology that could crown them kings. The dawn broadcast had reached every corner of the stars, and now the storm was racing home. The wayfarers hovered in fragile silence between the giants. Their leader sat rigid in his chair, watching signals multiply across his screens. Dozens of fleets, hundreds of ships, each plotting a course toward Sol. They were weeks away, some months, but the tide was coming. He felt small in the shadow of humanity's legacy. His crew were explorers, not warriors, yet here they were, standing at the edge of a war that could reshape all living memory. We should flee, one pilot whispered, voice thin with fear. The leader shook his head. If we flee, the galaxy will only hear lies. We are watchers, we carry truth. And truth must be heavier than fear. The custodian sphere appeared before them once again. Its lens spun open, flooding their cabin with light. Images flickered, memories of old battles where human fleets crushed empires, burned skies, and silenced stars. Then came the last image, Earth darkening, its people gone. Only machines left to dream of dawn. The sphere's voice was heavy with certainty. The fleet endures. Watchers must choose. Do you speak as friends of Earth or as strangers? The leader's heart clenched. There was no neutral ground anymore. Whatever answer he gave would shape what came next. He rose slowly, steady though. His knees trembled. We are not enemies. We do not seek to take what is not ours. We will speak as witnesses to the stars, not as thieves. The custodian paused, silent as a mountain. Then it spoke, softer this time. Then you are marked. Your kind will carry Earth's memory. You will be spared when judgment comes. The words chilled the crew, for they realized what judgment meant. The fleet would not negotiate with those who arrived. It would test them as it had tested the raiders. Only those who endured would live to tell of it. From the far edge of the system, their sensors picked up the first flicker of engines. Too small to be an empire's armada, too quick to be merchants. Pirates, the same raiders who had fled now returned with reinforcements, greedy enough to rush ahead of others. A swarm of small ships tore through the void, their combs full of laughter and hunger. They believed they could swarm and overwhelm, stripping ancient steel for their own gain. They did not understand the storm they were flying into. The custodian gave no warning this time. The nearest warship tilted its massive hull and opened fire. Beams lanced across the void, carving through raider craft as if they were dust. Dozens vanished in seconds, their wreckage burning like brief meteors before fading to silence. The survivors scattered, firing wildly, but their shots only flared against shields stronger than mountains. The second warship joined the assault, unleashing a storm of missiles that tracked and struck with impossible precision. One by one, the raiders died, their screams cut short in the void. The wayfarers watched, hearts heavy. It was not a battle. It was a culling. The leader closed his eyes for a moment, then forced himself to watch. "The galaxy will see this," he said quietly, "and they will not forgive." His words carried weight, for he knew every empire, every kingdom, every fleet was watching now. The dawn signal had carried not only warning, but proof. The galaxy could no longer pretend humanity was gone. They were awake, and they were ruthless as legend had promised. When the last raider ship burned out, silence returned. The custodian's voice filled it. Threat removed. Fleet endures. It said no more. It needed no more. The truth was plain to anyone who had seen the light of those cannons. The wayfarers sat in silence, knowing they would be the ones to tell the galaxy. They would speak of giants that had risen from stone, of warships that remembered everything and forgave nothing, of Earth that had slept for 500,000 years and awoke stronger than any living memory. The language specialist whispered the words that no one wanted to speak aloud. "The galaxy will not come to learn. They will come to destroy." The leader nodded. "And they will learn the cost." He looked once more at the massive shapes turning slowly above Earth. They were not just relics. They were the voice of a people who had refused to die. He felt the weight of history pressing down on him, heavier than any stone. "We are witnesses," he said, "and the story we tell will be one of fire." As the sixth warship locked into formation, the fleet shimmered like a crown around Earth. The stars waited, the galaxy moved, and destiny tightened its grip. Humanity was gone, but its hand still reached across the stars, and no one would escape its grasp.